7 months ago, I was $50,000 in debt, and last month I just made $112,000 with my company. I was at the point where I was eating rice and beans on a daily basis. I couldn't afford food. I couldn't afford to pay my credit cards on time, and I just felt lost. But instead of giving up, turning around and finding a more comfortable way to live life, I was able to push through that and build a company that is doing over $1 million a year. And I did that within 4 months. And I'm actually not telling you any of this or sharing my story because I have anything to sell you. I don't sell a course. I don't do anything like that. I genuinely want to help people like you who have been in stressful times, just as I have, who have been feeling lost or feeling like they've reached their endpoint, help push through that one more time they need to finally see the success they're looking for. And if you don't know me, my name is Colton Holland. I'm the founder of Orion AI. We are an AI CRM company that automates sales for life insurance agencies. We've generated over $4 million in sales additionally with AI for all of our users. But I didn't always run this company. Of course, it's 4 months old. So how did I get myself into the position where I was $50,000 in debt 7 months ago? To get there, we actually have to start way back to my freshman year of college 3 years ago. At that point, I was a fitness influencer. I had 120,000 followers on Instagram, 110,000 followers on TikTok, and I was making anywhere from like $4,000 to $8,000 with sponsored deals. Like I was a bucked up athlete, I was a TLF or Take Life Further athlete and model, and I did some fitness coaching on the side. Now at this point I was chilling. I was in Tampa. I had like $20,000 to my name in like Bitcoin and then in my savings. And I felt like the big man on campus. However, that was when I actually got exposed to what real entrepreneurship looked like. And I knew that if I wanted to really feel like I've accomplished the goals that I had set out for myself in life, I needed to go further than just posting content and taking a couple clients on as a fitness coach. And I needed to start getting into real business where I can make not only 10, but 20, 30, 40, 50, $100,000 a month. And that is exactly when I got into life insurance sales. Now, there's actually a funny story. I get in the car with my friend and he's like, I found this golden opportunity. You can make so much money. You can be a dropout and make 10K a month. And I was like, dude, that sounds like ass. Then he showed me some people that were actually making that money. And I thought to myself, if these, for lack of better terms, if these retards could make $10,000 a month selling life insurance, then there's no reason I can't either. And so the summer going into sophomore year at college, I got licensed, I became a salesperson, I got my contracts with carriers, and I started to sell. And do I mean sell as in close deals? No, I mean sell as in call people, get rejected, and then not end up getting paid. This is the first big mistake I did, and this was what I would consider my first real business. Now, was I bad at selling? No, I was actually already the top salesperson in my agency within 2 to 3 months of getting started. However, the issue was not my personal skills, it was that I joined a startup sales team that had zero mentorship available. And this is the first issue, is I went based on just how much I liked the person versus actual mentorship and capabilities. My mentor, I think, had good intentions. Obviously, I'm not going to out him, but let's just say he had no fucking clue what he was doing. Every single one of his agents, he had one piece of advice for when they were getting started. Start an LLC, take out as many business credit cards as you possibly can, and use those to buy leads so you could float your marketing expenses before you actually start getting paid. And then he masked the fact that no one was getting paid because he didn't know how to teach people how to sell as the grind, and that it eventually gets better because obviously he was making overrides off of our work. And that's how he paid his bills. And so my first 8 months in the business, I sold hundreds of thousands of dollars of insurance, which would have commissioned me hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I ended up only making roughly about 60 or 70,000, where I spent probably upwards of like 130,000 on not only lifestyle stuff and paying my bills in my new apartment that I had signed at the same time, which was also a very bad move when I could have just continued riding my scholarship at University of Tampa, but also in marketing expenses and chargebacks. That put me in significant debt. And now I'm a college dropout. At this point, I'm like $35,000 in debt. And now I'm lost. I'm stressing out because I was trained to line someone else's pocket besides my own. But there's 2 ways you can use experience as a business owner. You can, 1, blame everyone else, say how it's not your fault, and then just keep bitching and sucking, and you don't get anywhere with that. Or you can say, hey, this might not have been my fault 100%, but it is my problem. So what can I take away from this to know exactly how to fix this and be better moving forward? And when I did that, that's when I learned the importance of making sure to not start a company by going into debt, and making sure that the only mentors you follow are, one, people who have actually done the thing that they are teaching you, and two, people that are actually giving sound, estimated advice and risks rather than emotional risks. You don't want to follow someone that is just telling you to throw everything at it without thinking about any of the pros and cons, any of the risks you expose yourself to, anything like that. You want to follow someone that takes into the situation, tells you the upsides, tells you the downsides of the risk, and then allows you to make that decision for yourself about where do you actually want to take it. Because if I actually knew that business credit cards weren't separate from your identity and were actually tied to me, and I was still responsible for them, I would have never done that. If I did know that he had no fucking clue what he was talking about, and no one on the team was getting paid, and I wasn't just the only one that hadn't figured it out, then I would not have made that risk. And there was, some deception there. And that's why it's super crucial. If you can do one thing right when you get into business, find a good mentor. And then over a series of trying to figure out how to scrape money together, unfortunately at times asking family members for money so I could buy groceries instead of not eating for a few days, and possibly being at the worst I've ever been mentally, I was able to get introduced to my next business mentor through a couple bad interviews where we were just not very open to each other. We somehow had a third-party person convince us to work together, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I was still in life insurance sales, however, I was now managing a team, and I was selling underneath mentorship that actually got the job done because they were already producing a lot of reps that were making a lot of money. And if you think mentorship still doesn't matter, simply changing who I was mentored by changed me from struggling and going negative $50,000 to over the next 6 months making over $200,000 as a life insurance agent. I was making upwards of $42,000 a month. So if I was making that much over 6 months, surely I was paying off my debt, right? That's what you'd want to think. That's not what I did. And this is where lesson 2 comes into play. As fast as money can come, it can leave you 10 times faster. Now, before this whole experience, I was very, very risk tolerant. I didn't give a shit how much money was in my bank account, how much debt that I was in. If I could invest into my business some way to hopefully grow it even further and quicker, I was 100% willing to take that trade-off. That included flying teams out for a trip so we could all get into an office and work together rather than virtually. That included funding competitions with cash prizes for my team in my own pocket. And that also included giving them crazy bumps and raises when I personally couldn't even float it myself. And then on top of that, I made probably the worst decision I could have made at that time, which was getting my dream high rise in Austin, Texas. And now this thing was sick. It had sunrise, it had sunset views, it was full ceiling to window glass all the way around 270 degrees. I was living like a king. I literally was in the nicest building with one of the nicest layouts in Austin, Texas. But I was paying $5,000 a month in rent, plus I still had my other place in Tampa I was paying off. So although I was making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month, I was finding every way possible to spend as much that came in my lifestyle. And if this sounds like a word that we all know and love, LARPing, that's exactly what it was. I was chasing the lifestyle that I knew other people wanted to see that would get the approval of other people. I was not chasing the lifestyle that I wanted and that would actually fulfill myself and be actually smart. And the worst part of all is after my 3rd month of living in my dream high-rise, it felt no different than living in my apartment at Tampa or living back home, which is where I live now. At the end of the day, that nice car, that nice apartment, none of it's gonna make you happy. None of it's gonna fulfill you long-term. You might get a solid 1 month, maybe 2, maybe 3 out of it. It's not gonna make you happy. And the hard part is you have to buy it yourself to realize that. So not only was I stressing my balls off because my minimum living expenses were $10,000 a month, but I also had to pay $20,000 a month in salaries and my own marketing costs. And then if things didn't go perfectly, then I was cooked. And that's what happened. I hired the wrong people. And in the month of November, I got rolled $80,000 in debt from my agents that did illegal things, did bad things, and never paid off their debts. And I was responsible for that as the agency owner. And now we're all caught up. 7 months ago in January, when I left selling life insurance from all the roll-up debt, killing all my commissions that month where I couldn't pay those bills and everything like that, I had to buy out my lease with my apartment, and I was in $50,000 in debt. Living back home, $5,000 in my bank account. What was I gonna do to get myself out of it this time? Now, I could have gotten a standard sales job. I could have worked somewhere, chip it down $1,000 at a time, which would have literally taken me years at that point. I could have gone back to school. I got a fat scholarship from U Miami that, I turned down because I was like, that would be a pretty fun side quest. But I was like, the last thing I need is to waste time on school and go into more debt, even if I get a good scholarship. I knew to get myself out of this point, I needed to go even harder than I have ever been, and I needed to look to create as much leverage as possible in my business as possible with the $5,000 that I had left in my bank account. And this is when Claude Code started becoming very good around December and January. And I went all in on the AI route. But with AI, you can do a million different things. So I was thinking to myself, do I sell AI websites? Do I build AI operating systems? What do I use AI for? And then I was thinking to myself, well, I already know how to sell life insurance. I know how to run systems and operations, and I know how to use AI. What if I were to build an AI CRM that calls leads, texts leads, emails leads for life insurance agents, and allows them to get in contact with more leads than they ever have before without working anymore? And that's where the idea of Orion came around. Now, here's the one gap. I'm a fucking college dropout, and I was a business major. I don't know the single thing about software development. So then how did I bridge the gap with $5,000 in my bank account to now with a software company making $112,000 a month? If I don't know what I'm doing and I don't have the money to hire people, how am I going to make that jump? And that is where the bootstrapping comes into play. You just got to learn. With AI, with YouTube and social media, there is as much information as you could possibly need to become a millionaire. All you have to do is go out and find it and then actually listen to it. I didn't teach myself how to code because AI could write the code, but I taught myself everything that I needed to know to launch and build a software company and be a software engineer. I learned how to build and design a front end to handle all the different states of buttons and statuses and job execution. I learned how to wire it into a back end with a database, with auth and security. I learned how to build compliance into my website with ADA, with HIPAA, cookie consent, data privacy and user rights. I learned how to EDE test, to QA test, to security test. And if you're watching this, you probably have no fucking clue what that means. And I didn't know what that means 7 months either, but I knew that was the gap between a winning business idea, because no one else could possibly do it or has done it, and where I was feeling lost and not knowing how I was going to make my next credit card payments. And then after working hundreds of hours a week, 3 months straight, I worked from 9 in the morning to midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning every single day, no Sundays, no Saturdays off for 3 months straight. I launched the first version of Orion, and we took our first users in the end of March. And was this easy? No, this was the hardest thing I have ever done. There was a lot of doubt in my mind, if I'm actually capable of doing this. I obviously have zero experience. I have zero reason to think I should. I had barely enough money to get by for those 3 months, let alone start a company. And I knew I had one shot. And if I didn't get it right, then I would legitimately have no other option but to get a job and fall back. And I would put myself in a position worse, probably 99% of the US. And I probably would have had to file for bankruptcy if we're being honest. But once we launched in March, I didn't slow down. I sped up, if anything. There were some weeks I was working 120, 130 hours a week. Nights where I didn't sleep and I was working 40 hours straight. But the most important thing when you have zero capital is to leverage as many routes of distribution that you do have. For example, myself, I am obviously very good at creating content from when I was a fitness influencer. I knew a lot of people in the space. I created a new Instagram account and I started posting content every single day throughout the periods of time I was developing Orion. That allowed my organic brand to close a lot of sales for myself without any paid traffic, any ads, anything like that. The second way is I actually gave up percentage of equity in my company, small portions, in order to use other people's distribution capabilities. For example, my business partner, Wiley, who has a small portion of the company, he runs a $15 million a month life insurance agency and has a brand in the space. So by giving him a portion of the company, I'm now able to leverage his brand, his company for distributing Orion. So then we have to pay less in ads to start scaling the company. And I heavily recommend that if you have very, very limited capital and you also have good connections, to not try to do everything yourself. You don't have to bootstrap everything. Look for partnerships. Look for people that can distribute your product, your company, your service. Give them affiliate, whether it's commissions or you give them equity in the company if you have a low ticket product like we do. And with that, you're going to be able to get yourself so much further than trying to do everything yourself from scratch when you have very little to work with. That is one of the best things you can do to leverage your current position if you don't have a lot to work with, other than using AI, which I was talking about previously. AI is by far the best arbitrage tool that you can use to get 100, 1,000 times your output if you actually know how to use it. Whether that's building softwares, that's building apps, it's anything like that. And so if you guys want to know how to use AI to make a bunch of money, obviously I would consider myself a pro at it now. Just drop comments or DM me on Instagram, which is linked down below. I will definitely create more videos on that. If you yourself are a life insurance agent or agency owner and you want to automate your sales with the best and fastest growing CRM technology, you can start your free trial for Orion down below in the description as well. I have a new mobile app company that is launching very soon within the next month or two. It's called TrueFit AI. It's going to be an AI coach that's going to do all of your programming, diets, everything like that for you. You can join the wait list below. It's just going to be a mobile app, just like something like Cal AI. Super chill. Really excited for that to come out. But if you like this video, like, comment, subscribe. I really appreciate all the help. I'll see you guys in the next one.